My name is Raymond. I am 63 years old, and on a cold Tuesday morning in November, I received a phone call that I still have nightmares about to this day. I was lying in a hospital bed. I had been there for 41 days. My left leg was in a cast. My right arm had a drip attached to it. The room smelled like antiseptic and cold air, and the only sound I could hear most mornings was the soft beeping of the machine next to my bed and the distant footsteps of nurses in the hallway. I had not seen my wife in over a month. I had not seen my son in 3 weeks. I was alone every single day. Alone, and then my phone rang. I did not recognize the number at first. I let it ring twice. Then something told me to pick it up. "Is this Raymond Gerald Patterson?" A voice said, flat, official, cold. "Yes," I said slowly. "This is Raymond." "Mr. Patterson, this is Detective Brian Holloway from the City Police Department. I am calling because a complaint has been filed against you by a Mrs. Carol Patterson. She has accused you of stalking and harassment across multiple locations, specifically 3 different cities, over the past 30 days. I remember the exact moment those words landed in my ears. I did not speak for a very long time, because I could not understand what was happening. I was in a hospital bed. I had not left that room in 41 days. My leg was broken in 2 places. I could not walk to the bathroom without a nurse helping me. And yet my wife had told the police that I had been following her across 3 cities for a month. How was that possible? I will tell you everything from the very beginning, because this story is not just about a phone call. It is about a marriage, a family, a man who gave everything he had and was left with nothing but silence. And it is about the truth that was hiding in the shadows for a very long time, waiting for the right moment to come into the light. I grew up with very little. My father was a carpenter. My mother cleaned houses for wealthy families on the other side of town. We lived in a small 2-bedroom house that always smelled like sawdust and cooking oil. We did not have much, but we had love. And we had respect. My father used to say, "Raymond, a man's character is the only thing that no one can take from him. Guard it like your life." I carried those words with me my entire life. I started working at 16. By 22, I had saved enough to attend night school for accounting. By 30, I had a small but steady career working as a financial analyst for a mid-sized company. I was not rich, but I was honest. I was dependable. I paid my bills on time. I helped my neighbors when they needed it, and I never, not once, raised my hand or my voice against another human being in my life. I met Carol when I was 34 years old. She was 31. She was beautiful, not just on the outside, though she was certainly that, but she had this way of laughing that made you feel like the whole room was lighter. She was a schoolteacher. She loved children. She volunteered at the local food bank on weekends. When I met her, I genuinely thought God had decided to be generous to me. We married when I was 36. The first few years were good, simple, quiet. We had our disagreements like every couple does, but we always came back to each other. We built a home together. We painted the walls ourselves. We planted a garden in the backyard that neither of us really knew how to take care of, but we laughed about it and kept trying. And then our son was born, Marcus. If you have ever held your child for the first time, you know there are no words for that feeling. Marcus was everything to me. From the very first moment he opened his eyes, I made a promise to him and to myself. I would never leave. I would always provide. I would always be there. I kept that promise for 30 years. I worked overtime when we needed money. I missed dinners and weekends so that Marcus could go to a good school, so that Carol could have a nice home, so that we could take family vacations and not worry about the cost. I was not a perfect father. I was not always home. But everything I did for them. Marcus grew up to be a good man, smart, ambitious, He went to university, graduated with honors, and got a job at a technology company in the city. I was proud of him in a way I could not even fully express. I used to tell my old friends, that boy is going to go further than any of us ever dreamed. And then he met Diana. Diana came into our lives about 4 years ago. She was Marcus's girlfriend, then his fiancée, then his wife, all within about 2 years. She moved fast, Marcus moved fast, and Carol, my wife, loved Diana from the very beginning, absolutely adored her. I genuinely tried to love Diana too, but something felt wrong from the very beginning, not wrong in a way I could point to and name. Just a feeling, the kind of feeling that settles in your chest and does not move, no matter how much you try to ignore it. Diana was polite to me in front of Marcus, but the moment he left the room, she barely looked at me. She had a way of speaking to me that was just barely respectful enough that no one could call it rude, but cold enough that I always felt like a stranger in my own home when she was there. She also had a way of speaking to Carol that I did not like. She whispered things in corners. She and Carol would go quiet when I walked into the room. They would share looks that I was not meant to understand. Little by little, Carol began to change. She started going out more without telling me where. She started taking calls in another room. She started agreeing with Diana's opinions about everything, including opinions about me. One evening, about 2 years ago, I came home from a long day and found Diana sitting at my kitchen table, having coffee with Carol. Marcus was not there. "Raymond," Diana said, looking me up and down with a small smile. "Carol and I were just talking about how difficult it must be for her, being at home with someone who never really talks." Carol looked at the table. I looked at Diana. I said nothing. I just nodded, walked to the bedroom, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark for a while. That was how it always went. Someone would say something sharp, something designed to sting, and I would go quiet. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I had been raised to believe that silence is sometimes more powerful than any word. But silence has a cost, and I was paying that cost every single day. On the 1st of October, 14 months ago, I was driving home from visiting an old work colleague who had just been diagnosed with diabetes. It was raining. The roads were slick. I was tired. A truck ran a red light. I do not remember the impact itself. I remember the sound, a terrible hollow crash of metal, and then I remember waking up in a hospital room with a nurse leaning over me and a pain in my leg so deep it felt like the bone itself was screaming. My left femur was fractured in 2 places. My right wrist had a hairline fracture. I had 3 broken ribs. And I had a moderate concussion that the doctors said would take several weeks to fully heal. The surgery on my leg alone took 4 hours. When I woke up from the surgery, the first face I expected to see was Carol's. She was not there. It was a nurse named Patricia, a wide, warm woman with kind eyes and a soft voice, who told me what had happened and explained my condition. It was Patricia who held my hand when I first tried to move and could not. Carol arrived the next morning. She stayed for 40 minutes. She asked the doctor a few questions. She looked at my leg in the cast. She said, "Well, Raymond, you really got yourself into something this time." And then she said she had to get back home because Diana and Marcus were coming over for dinner. She left. I lay in that hospital bed, and I stared at the ceiling, and I told myself it was fine. She had her own life. She had responsibilities. People dealt with stress differently. I would heal, and things would go back to normal. That was the lie I told myself. The doctors told me I would be in the hospital for at least 6 weeks. The surgery had been complex. The fractures needed time to stabilize before I could begin rehabilitation. I was not going anywhere. The first week, Carol visited twice. The second week, once. By the third week, she had stopped coming altogether. I called her, she answered, sometimes. When she did, the conversations were short and strange. She sounded distracted, busy. Once I heard Diana's voice in the background, laughing at something. Carol said she had to go. Marcus visited once. He came on a Saturday afternoon, stayed about 30 minutes, and spent most of that time on his phone. When I tried to talk to him about how I was feeling, not just physically, but emotionally, he looked at me with an expression that I can only describe as impatience. "Dad, you're going to be fine. The doctors know what they're doing." "Marcus, I'm not talking about the leg. I'm talking about Dad." He stood up. "I really have to get back. Diana has a thing tonight, and I promised I'd be home early. You understand." He left. And I lay there, day after day, old Raymond, alone in room 14 of St. Augustine Medical Center, staring at the ceiling and listening to the beeping of machines. The nurses became my family. Patricia, who always smiled, a young man named Digi, who brought me extra pudding on Tuesday evenings, a doctor named Simmons, who stopped by every morning and actually talked to me not just about my leg, but about life, about books, about nothing in particular. These people, strangers when I arrived, became the only human warmth I had in those 41 days. My phone remained mostly silent until the morning Detective Holloway called. I asked Detective Holloway to repeat himself. He did. Carol had filed a formal police report stating that I, Raymond Gerald Patterson, had been stalking her. She claimed I had shown up at her sister's house in Millfield, at a hotel in Darstone, and outside Diana and Marcus's apartment in the city. She said it had been happening for nearly a month. She said she was frightened. She said she felt unsafe. She had submitted photographs as evidence, photographs of a man she said was me, detective. I said, and I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded, "I need you to write down what I am about to tell you. Go ahead. I am currently a patient at St. Augustine Medical Center. I have been here for 41 days. I had surgery on my leg on October 3rd. I cannot walk without assistance. I have not left this building since I arrived. If your department contacts the hospital administration and the surgical team of Dr. Franklin Simmons, they will confirm every single word I just told you." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Detective Holloway said, "Mr. Patterson, I am going to need to call you back." He hung up. I put the phone down on the blanket covering my broken leg, and I looked out the window at the gray November sky. And for the first time in those 41 days, I felt something that was not just loneliness or pain. I felt a cold, sharp, very specific kind of fear. Because if Carol had submitted photographs of a man who looked like me, being in places she said I had been following her to, then someone had been doing that deliberately. Someone had wanted the police to believe I was stalking my own wife. And there was only one question that mattered: who and why? Detective Holloway called back 3 hours later. By then, Dr. Simmons had already spoken to the department directly. The hospital had provided my admission records, surgical notes, nursing logs, everything. 41 days of documented medical history with my name on every single page. Holloway's voice was different when he called back, quieter, more careful. "Mr. Patterson," he said, "I have to be honest with you. This situation has become significantly more complicated." "Tell me," I said. "The photographs your wife submitted, we've had our team look at them more closely. The man in the photographs is not you, but he resembles you strongly. Same height, same build, same gray in hair. He was wearing clothes that, I'll be honest, looked like clothes someone had deliberately chosen to match your appearance." My heart slowed down. "Detective, are you telling me someone was impersonating me?" "That is what it appears, yes. And my wife filed a report saying this man was me." "Yes, she identified the man in the photographs as you, Mr. Patterson. I closed my eyes. I thought about Carol's voice on the phone over the past weeks. Distracted, cold, gone. I thought about Diana's laughter in the background. I thought about Marcus, in that hospital chair, barely looking at me. And then, like a key turning in a very old lock, something opened inside my mind. I remembered a conversation. About 6 months before the accident, I had overheard Carol on the phone. I was not trying to listen. I had walked past the bedroom door and heard just a fragment. "He won't know until it's done. Just be patient." I had thought nothing of it at the time. I assumed she was talking about a surprise, a gift of some kind. I had been so foolish. "Detective Holloway," I said slowly, "I think I need to tell you some things, and I think you are going to want to listen very carefully." Over the next few days, Detective Holloway's team began investigating not just the stalking complaint, but everything surrounding it. What they found was this. For the past 8 months, Carol had been in contact with a lawyer, a divorce lawyer. She had been secretly preparing to file for divorce, a divorce in which she intended to claim that I had been emotionally abusive, controlling, and most critically, that she had been living in fear of me for years. The stalking accusations were part of this plan. If a restraining order had been issued against me, it would have been documented on my record. It would have supported her claims in the divorce case. It would have painted me as a dangerous, obsessive man, and her as a victim who deserved everything: the house, the savings, the pension I had built over 30 years of work. The man in the photographs, the man who had been following Carol across 3 cities, dressed to look like me, was a private investigator, hired by Carol, or more precisely, hired by Diana. Because here is the part that broke me when I heard it. Here is the part that still sits heavy in my chest like a stone. Diana had been the architect of all of it. Diana, my son's wife, the woman who sat at my kitchen table and smiled at me, had spent the better part of a year building a case to destroy me. She had convinced Carol that I was a threat. She had found old arguments Carol and I had, small things, normal marriage disagreements, and reframed them as evidence of abuse. She had fed Carol a story, slowly, over months, that she deserved more, that she had wasted her life, that I was holding her back, and when Carol was ready, Diana had connected her with the lawyer and arranged for the investigator. But why? Why would Diana do this? The answer came from an unexpected place. My brother Thomas, who lived across the state and whom I had not spoken to in a few months, called me at the hospital. He had heard through the family grapevine that something was wrong. "Raymond," Thomas said, "I have to tell you something. I should have told you months ago, and I am sorry that I didn't." He told me that Diana's family had significant financial debts, that Diana had married Marcus not just for love, though perhaps there was some of that, but because she had seen an opportunity. Marcus was doing well at his company, but that company was partly backed by a trust fund that had been set up in my name, for my family. If Carol and I divorced under circumstances that framed me as an abusive partner, the trust would be contested. The assets could potentially be restructured. Diana had consulted with her own people about this. In simple terms, Diana wanted my money, and she had used my wife to try to get it. When I heard this, I did not explode. I did not cry. I did not shout. I put the phone down carefully, rested my head back against the pillow, and I looked at the ceiling. And I thought about my father. Raymond, a man's character is the only thing no one can take from him. My character was untouched. My hospital records were clear. The truth was coming to light, and I was going to let it. Marcus came to the hospital 3 days after Detective Holloway's second call. He did not come because he wanted to. He came because Holloway's department had contacted him as part of the investigation. And Marcus, finally, was beginning to understand that something had gone very wrong. He walked into room 14, looking like a man who had not slept in days. He was pale. His suit was wrinkled. He sat down in the chair beside my bed, and for a long moment, neither of us said anything. Then he said, "Dad, I didn't know." "I know," I said. "I swear to you, I did not know what Diana was doing. I didn't know about the investigator. I didn't know about the police report. She told me that you had been calling Mom repeatedly, that you were making her uncomfortable. I believed her. I looked at my son, my 30-year-old son, who I had watched come into the world, who I had sat with through fevers and nightmares and broken hearts, who I had driven to university with a car full of boxes and my heart so full of pride I could barely speak. "Marcus," I said quietly, "did you ever once think to ask me, to call me here in this room, and ask me if any of it was true?" He looked at his hands. He said nothing. "I was here," I said, "for 41 days. You came once. You stayed 30 minutes. And not once did you look at your father and ask if he was all right, Dad." "I am not angry, Marcus, and I meant it. I truly meant it. I am not angry. I am just tired. I am tired in a way that has nothing to do with this broken leg." Marcus broke down then, completely. He put his face in his hands, and he cried in a way that I had not seen since he was a small boy. And there was a part of me, the father part, the part that never stopped, that wanted to reach over and put my hand on his back and tell him it was all right. But I kept my hands in my lap, because it was not all right. Not yet. You need to hear everything, I said, and then you need to make some decisions about your life, not for me, for yourself. And I told him everything. Carol came 2 days after Marcus. She did not call ahead. She just appeared in the doorway of room 14 at 2 in the afternoon, wearing her gray coat, her hair pulled back, looking like a woman who had aged 5 years in 5 weeks. I was doing my afternoon physical therapy exercises when she arrived. Small movements the therapist had shown me, trying to regain some sensation in my leg. I stopped when I saw her. I set my hands in my lap, and I waited. She walked slowly to the chair. She sat down. She looked at the cast on my leg. She looked at the machines. She looked at everything in the room except my face. Then she said, "Raymond, I am so sorry." I let the words sit in the air between us. "She told me you were calling the house at all hours." Carol whispered. "She showed me text messages, or what she said were text messages from your number. She showed me the photographs. She told me." Carol's voice broke. "She told me you had hired someone to watch her, that you were trying to ruin her marriage because you didn't approve of her." "Carol," I said carefully. "Did those things sound like me?" She closed her eyes. "No," she said softly. "They didn't, but Raymond, she was so convincing, and I was so lonely, and I was angry at you for always working, always being quiet, always what?" I asked. My voice was not unkind, but it was steady, always just accepting everything. She looked at me now. There were tears running down her face. "You never fought back. You never got angry. You just went quiet. And I think a part of me needed you to fight back, needed you to show me that I mattered enough to fight for." I thought about that for a long time. "Carol," I said finally, "in all our years of marriage, did I not come home every night? Did I not work for this family? Did I not sit across from you at that table every morning for 30 years? "Yes," she whispered. "I showed you every single day, in the only way my father taught me how." I looked at my hands, those old hands, the hands that had paid for a house and a son's education and a garden neither of us knew how to keep alive. I am sorry if that was not enough. I am sorry if my silence felt like absence. But Carol, you handed my name to the police. You signed a document saying I was a threat to you, while I was lying here. The words were not loud. They were not cruel, but they landed. Carol pressed her hands to her mouth and bent forward in the chair, crying in a way that filled the small hospital room with the kind of grief that has no easy name. I did not comfort her. I also did not turn away. I sat with her in that room, in that pain, because that is what I knew how to do. I had always known how to sit with difficult things. The investigation into Diana took another 3 weeks to complete. What the detectives' team found was thorough and damning. The private investigator, a man named Cosby, who worked out of a small office on the east side of the city, had been hired under a false name connected to Diana's sister's account. Cosby testified that he had been instructed to dress to resemble me, to follow Carol to specific locations, and to allow himself to be photographed by a second accomplice who trailed at a distance. The text messages that Carol had been shown, the ones supposedly from my number, had been fabricated using a spoofing application that makes messages appear to come from any phone number. This technology is not difficult to obtain. Diana had learned about it through a contact she had made in her family's legal circle. The law came down on Diana with a precision and finality that I confess I did not entirely take pleasure in, because a part of me grieved for the woman my son had loved. But the charges were serious: filing a false police report, conspiracy to commit fraud, and identity fraud. Diana's lawyer negotiated, as lawyers do. She did not go to prison, but she received a suspended sentence, community service, and a permanent mark on her record that would follow her for years. Her family's plan, the plan to contest the trust and access my financial assets, collapsed completely. Marcus filed for divorce from Diana 3 months after she was charged. He did not ask for my advice on this decision. But when it was done, he called me and told me what he had decided, and his voice was the voice of a man who was trying to find himself again after being lost for a long time. "I loved her, Dad," he said quietly. "I really did." "I know," I said. "That makes it harder, not easier. How do you forgive someone for something like this?" I thought about Carol, about her face in that hospital room, about 30 years of a quiet, imperfect, real marriage. "You start," I said, "by accepting that people are capable of becoming lost, and then you decide whether you are willing to find them again, or whether you need to let them find themselves first." He was quiet. "Dad, I should have called you more when you were in the hospital." "Yes," I said, "you should have. I'm sorry." "I know, son, I know." I was discharged from St. Augustine Medical Center on the 14th of November. Marcus came to bring me home. He pushed the wheelchair to the front entrance, because I still needed it for another few weeks, and he loaded my small bag into the car with a care and gentleness that reminded me of the boy he had been. He opened the car door for me. He helped me in, and when he got into the driver's seat, he sat for a moment before starting the engine. "Home," he said. "Home," I said. The house looked the same from the outside. The garden was overgrown. Nobody had tended to it while I was gone. The front step needed sweeping. One of the porch light bulbs had burned out, but the walls were still the same color we had painted them together, Carol and I, 22 years ago. The kitchen still smelled faintly of the herbs we kept near the window. The bedroom still had the photograph of Marcus as a baby on the bedside table, the one I had never allowed to be moved. Carol was not there. She was staying at her sister's house while things were sorted out. The divorce proceedings she had initiated were still technically active, though her lawyer had grown considerably quieter since the investigation began. I did not call her. I sat in my own armchair, the one I had sat in for decades, the one whose cushion had the shape of me pressed into it, and I looked out the window at the overgrown garden, and I thought, this is what a man has left when the noise goes away: his home, his memories, his character. I had all three. 6 weeks after I came home, Carol wrote me a letter, a real letter, on paper, in her handwriting that I had not seen in a long time. I will not share every word of it. Some things belong only to the people they were written for. But I will share this. She wrote that she had spent 30 years slowly convincing herself that my silence was indifference, when the truth was that it was devotion in its quietest form. She wrote that Diana had given her an explanation for a loneliness that she had never properly understood, and that she had accepted that explanation too quickly because it was easier than looking honestly at herself. She wrote, "Raymond, you were always the one thing in my life that was certain, and I think I was so afraid of how much I needed that certainty that I let someone talk me into destroying it. I have no right to ask for anything from you, but I wanted you to know that whatever you decide, I will understand, and I will spend the rest of my life being sorry." I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in the drawer beside my bed, next to the photograph of Marcus as a baby. And I picked up the phone. People ask me, those who know the full story, what I decided. They want to know if Carol and I reconciled. They want to know if I forgave her. They want a clean ending with a bow on it. Life does not work that way. What I can tell you is this. Carol came back to the house in January. She did not come back the way people come back in movies, with dramatic music and rain and long speeches. She came back quietly, the way she had always done things when she was being honest. She knocked on the front door. I opened it. She had a bag in her hand and a look on her face that was the most undefended, unguarded expression I had ever seen on her in 30 years. I stepped aside. She walked in. We did not speak for a long while. We sat in the kitchen, and she made tea. She always made tea when she needed to do something with her hands, and we sat across from each other at that old table. "I don't expect it to be the way it was," she said. "No," I agreed, "it won't be. Do you still want to try?" I looked at her across the table. This woman I had chosen, this woman who had made terrible mistakes, this woman who had once laughed in a way that made the whole room lighter. "I want to try," I said, "to build something new, something honest, something that doesn't have silence where conversation should be." She nodded. "I can do that," she said softly. "We'll see," I said, and that was enough for that day. I am 63 years old, and I have learned many things in my time on this earth. But this experience, those 41 days in a hospital bed, that phone call from Detective Holloway, the whole terrible unfolding of what had been done in my name, taught me things I had not expected to learn this late in life. The first thing is this: silence is not the same as peace. For years, I stayed quiet when I was hurt. I believed that a good man bore things with dignity, without complaint, and there is some truth in that. But silence without communication is not strength, it is distance, and distance, over time, becomes a wound. I should have spoken more, not with anger, but with honesty. I should have said, "Carol, I feel you moving away from me, and I do not know how to stop it." I should have said, "Marcus, I need you to check on your father sometimes, not just as a duty, but as a son." I should have said those things out loud in words in the kitchen, at the dinner table, not just shown them through years of quiet work. The second thing is this: cruelty rarely looks like cruelty when it arrives. Diana did not arrive in our family like a villain in a mask. She arrived smiling, carrying gifts, full of warmth and laughter. She came in through the door we held open for her. The cruelty came later, piece by piece, so slowly that by the time Carol recognized what she had participated in, she was already too deep to see clearly. Be careful who you allow to whisper in your ear. Be careful who tells you that the people who have loved you quietly for decades are actually your enemy. The third thing: truth does not need to shout. It just needs time. I did not need to defend myself dramatically. I did not need to make speeches or call lawyers or confront anyone with anger. The truth was in those hospital records, in those nursing logs. In every Tuesday evening that nurse Digi brought me extra pudding. The truth was patient. And when the time came, it spoke for itself. And the final thing, the most important thing, is this: the people who love you deserve to know they are loved. Not in your heart, out loud, with words and presence and imperfection and honesty. My father taught me to guard my character. And that was good advice. My character survived everything that was thrown at it. But I wish someone had also taught me to guard my relationships with the same diligence. To tend to them the way a gardener tends a garden, not just planting it and walking away, but coming back every day, checking on what is growing, pulling up what is dying, making sure it has enough water and enough light. I let my garden go unattended for too long, and it grew wild and strange and unfamiliar. It is not too late to tend it again. It is never too late. These days, Carol and I walk in the garden most evenings. The leg still aches when the weather changes. The doctors say it probably always will. I have made my peace with that. Some wounds leave marks. That is not failure. That is just the record of a life lived. Marcus is finding his way. He calls me every Sunday. Sometimes we talk for an hour. Sometimes it is 5 minutes, and it does not matter. What matters is that he calls. And on those calls, sometimes I hear something in his voice that sounds like the boy who used to knock on my bedroom door at night because he had a bad dream. And every time I hear it, I answer. The trust is healing slowly, as trust does. Nurse Patricia sent me a card at Christmas. I have it on the refrigerator. Dr. Simmons and I still exchange books. He sent me one last month with a note that said, "For the most composed patient I ever had." I laughed when I read that. I laughed for a long time, because what choice did I have? I am Raymond Gerald Patterson. I am 63 years old. I was accused of crimes I could not possibly have committed by the woman I had spent 30 years loving. And I survived it, not with drama, not with revenge, not with bitterness, with patience, with truth, and with the quiet, unshakable certainty that a man who knows who he is has nothing to fear from anyone who tries to say otherwise. Guard your character, friends, and tend your garden every day. If this story touched your heart, if you have ever felt unseen, accused of something you didn't do, or overlooked by someone you loved, please leave a comment below. You are not alone. And if you believe in the power of truth and patience, share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. And before you go, please subscribe to this channel. Every week, we bring you stories that remind you of the strength in ordinary people. Raymond's story is one of them. Thank you for watching, and remember, the truth doesn't need to be loud, it just needs time.